Hello, Wethersfield intelligence families, which are also federal intelligence families. They have collusions with the names of other countries, and like China's name and America's name, used criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, offensively attaching people to fake conversations with themselves and others. All natures of investigations, investigators being used to put fake things in databases, fake transcripts on a mass scale. These are predicate acts methods that rolls with those with use slash s of those predicate acts methods, and that involve also use slash uses of the differences of guilt of the intelligence at the network locations or the intelligence next to them. Connecticut's Channel 3 News has roles with collusions with CNN sources and Fox News sources at and next to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, with people also at and next to campuses, intercities and intra-cities, and intercampuses and intra-campuses, collusion slash S with predicate acts with facts method slash S, manifest, roles. In other words, also why and how they have been getting away with subject treatments exactly the way it framed, exactly the way the breaching method needs them, and replacing what our founders left declassified to have communicated for themselves plurally. And as James Madison, the only founder that we know the name of as an individual. That is partially so wouldn't happen, what is still forced, which is they pretend our founders were George Washington, etc. You guys aren't even allowing people to be honest about the extortion of George Washington, or would have brought up the counter extortion and the founders plural behind James Madison and his plan to counter extort and force the other people to break the entrenched laws to an extent, which were timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists. I'm not even a lawyer. The lawyers have criminal foreign influence tactical delusions that could be healed if you guys would follow mandated law. This is recorded. The lawyers have wire crime acts and methods. They're different just because they're lawyers, but they know about the law. They're using their knowledge of good and evil to get over on people. You guys are they're influencing people to fake and change people's words, to value fake transcripts. Oh, well, that's not my job. That's what I learned. And let's go to that before the court. The court's been faking transcripts too. They're switching and forging names, including in the World Trade Center attack. Every year since the World Trade Center attack, in other words, CNN sources have roles at Central Connecticut State University and next to it on Paul Manafort Drive and the other sides of it, with people on off the Wethersfield corrections offices and on off the Wethersfield judicial branch offices who have roles with the World Trade Center attack with Connecticut and Washington, D.C. And there are proofs that these are people tied to Philadelphia, too, where the other plane crashed. And I know they're tied to California, where reportedly there was another plane that might have been used. And has roles with, these are people with triages interstates. There's a Jennifer Kanapicki who sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. She has intelligence families tied to her own, involved with the corner of Highcrest Street and Hangdog Lane. Involved also with a Rick Faglione, with a Brian Silver, and a Leahy family, with medical and sexual offenders of kids, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and their educators, putting with all these criminal foreign influences, putting fake things in databases, and then having people act tied to it, and putting fake ties and natures of ties between the kids, fake transcripts, fake evidences, all exceptions and exception nature used, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw uses of them. That could be also be used to show them too. They've been faking exceptions on a mass scale. They've been going all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the interbranch names and intelligence tied to them, a whole bunch of different countries at the same time with those families at and next to the campuses. That's why I'm noting the next to it part. A bunch of judges have ties to predicate acts on my street in Wethersfield, with a bunch of names at and next to Central Connecticut State University involved with sequence shifts and predicate acts with judges and prosecutors and their family members. A bunch of people tied to a Southern Bureau recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed this intercities. He planted evidences on both sides of Wethersfield High School. I never saw him inside of the high school in my life. Southern Bureau, I never had a class with him. He's increasingly involved with people named Cololo, involved with the Phil Cololo, further involved with some sexual and medical offenders of kids. And people tied to him involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones at the same time with sexual and medical offenders of kids. Has something to do with their rules, with conjunctions too, and as a Victorian house on Two Rod Highway is involved with a Phil Cololo with sexual and medical offenders of kids also on my street. And Whiting Forensics has more digital crimes with them, with a principal upskirt nature involved too, with worse crimes than that, and organized crimes with the kids. A bunch of teachers are further involved with that. They're making good people. They're making me say bad things about, I don't even know them. There's some of them fake ties to me. Whiting Forensics has people with the name O'Neill as a teacher in West Hartford, involved also with wire crimes with Whiting Forensics and digital crimes with them with a Joshua Julian and their kids, and also the kids of a Leahy family. A Leahy family's got their little daughter on Facebook involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, sexual medical offenders of kids, roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and they're putting fake transcripts, fake ties to me, the adults in their family, the whole, as adults, the kids of I believe it's the father of Brendan Leahy, who works at Hartford Hospital, Brendan Leahy. I believe his father works there too. They fake conversations with me. I never had a word of conversation with Brendan Leahy, who went to my schools and involved with a Rick Faglione, planting evidences with all sides of Central Connecticut State University style as a kid. They use investigators, criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw, a bunch of ways recorded. Why and how we have to speak about names A through only locations, areas, and states could operate names A through Z as countries. We have been used as systems by a breaching method, tactical ulterior from how we are individual species, body of individual bodies. We have been prevented free speech offensively. How they got away with this, the breaching method knew they would have to show them ways to get away with it. So it shows them they need to hide things past by offensively planting fake things in databases as collusion/S with names from off the campuses, putting the fake transcripts roles. So and it keeps styles, needs, and natures jumping into other people's business dishonestly, including the interbranch, as collusions with the crime scenes increasingly. Names next to body dumping spots, names roles with murders, names roles with murder confessions, names roles with untimely death, child abusers, leaders of kids at years apart, the same time brought up, and names next to the body dumping spots, names next to parks, names next to campuses, names from other areas, just temporary there, and playing with the news, planting evidences there, and other investigations. Investigators use that to cover, I was using that. The investigators in their campuses and their families, their neighbors, use remotely currently foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw, specifically as victims/hyper victims, and then forcing other things, others ourselves, to be blamed for that, rather than the breaching method that keeps them victims/hyper victims. So the breaching method is replaced right from nature's communications to us and right from our founders' communications to us. Our founders left declassified for themselves and for James Madison and for us. Why and how James Madison did not have free speech, why no one had free speech, and how no one had free speech. Why and how is because there was a breaching method entrenched, a human fact cheating nature breaching method. All truths about American history are still being and have been used for lies. All identities of difference, like the readings of statutes, the breaching method already showed them they could be discerned. Having read them, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions rot. They're only capable of it because of what I caught them doing with the campuses. You need to get me off the fake conversations with WFSB and with New Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts, and change communications with them. And with the district court has a bunch of people involved with the court and all sides of criminal and civil cases, as Connecticut's names involved with other courts with that and interstates, and with the World Trade Center attack context with the court next to it. Had time collusions with the Saudi attackers, where there were time uses of their difference, the difference of the name of Saudi Arabia, the difference of the name of China, the name of America. why and how we are part of economies, we're supposed to address how what they're calling other pretending they can't realize. Oh, it's an enemy or ally. In other words, A through Z were forced to be part of the economies. There were overt criminal enterprises, private ones. We're supposed to address the private ones, not just the overt criminal enterprises, which are also only allowed to be self-valued. Otherwise, that body was sensed. Where the breaching method propagated all differences and roles with nature's demonstrations of the uses of those differences propagated criminally important impulse, tactical illusions wrought. But also that body was sensed. If anybody was sensed, if they start addressing properly how we're supposed to address economies, how and why we're supposed to know. We're not supposed to have all these voices pertaining, oh, it's your opinion. In other words, there are things that are true always that we know. There's criminally uncharged criminal enterprises, uncharged private criminal enterprises that are recorded, and they're involved with the news and media locations and as their sources, including interbranch and the state corrections offices and judicial branch office of Connecticut, involved with organized crime acts and methods with names from Washington, D.C. and from the World Trade Center, involved with criminally foreign influence natures of trade, and people making opinions about the uses of our names, America, China. Uses of, in other words, the uses of their knowledge of good and evil. They know about a microchip. Oh, it's our security. If they want to speak about our security, get me off the fake conversation with WFSB and leaking while you're pretending not, including when you're being silent. A bunch of people tied to a Scalora family have roles next to the net with names next to the networks in Connecticut. A whole bunch of intimate ties reportedly. Everyone's forced and fake and changed communications between me and a Clyde Scalora. I never had a conversation verbally with a Clyde Scalora. Her cousins have roles of home break-ins in my area and roles with judges and prosecutors with sexual and medical offenders of kids years apart. A whole bunch of foreign and domestic involved with that at the same time. Overt criminal enterprises and private ones. But you guys need to get them on paper with the FBI director at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, involved with a whole bunch of names, foreign and domestic, before and after the World Trade Center attack, involved also with the kids of the leaders of the kids, abused sickly distinctly from the other kids. And the difference of that is exploited too by the breaching method because they have self-valued roles with it. And everyone's not realizing where they have self-valued roles, right? With what they don't self-value, but everyone has been shown that everyone treats subjects as knaves while pretending others since you guys were the youngest kids. Yet other communicated for our founders and for nature itself. Otherwise you were sensed as a body, including if you were a majority of people, including if you were everyone. And that was adapted to. So there are styles still trying to adapt to why and to how a breaching method reassigned Black people's rights of eyes and reassigned nature's demonstrations of how there were Black people's rights of eyes reassignments and how it's causing negative value nature progressions acts in nature because it's forbidding with the rest of nature's communications with this from being communicated, and it's replacing it. And there are rules forced on with that, otherwise that body is sensed. So all, like for example, psychiatry is one of the uncharged criminal enterprises because we have ones with badges with them and their roles, ones with gavels. A whole bunch of prosecutors involved with elderly homes and with veteran homes and judges like Judge Killian and other judges like Judge Smith, other judges that are forging and switching names roles with state prosecutors, state's attorneys, public defenders, all kinds of rackets only capable of being with the law, with the names of the people of sciences. So please have the news follow mandated law. Please, Fox News, do what's right. In other words, we're not supposed to speak about business pretending that we don't realize originally still private criminal enterprises were forced. The overt criminal enterprises and the terrorists were all recorded being and haven't been originally and still. They're countered wrong as collusion/us with them. In other words, the people of the campuses of New York City sickly distinctly and the same families have roles with the Connecticut campuses, and more leaders of the kids and their families through time. A bunch of people tied to a somebody Vigero have roles with people with sociologists and psychiatrists, putting fake transcripts in databases, planting evidences with a Judge Smith and people in my area, with a Judge Killian and their family members involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders, people with crimes from other areas, on people with like a Robert Rodriguez is one of the ones on Facebook with digital crimes, changing digital evidences with whiting forensics, involved with multiple judges too, and their family members, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw collusions with all natures of crime scenes, foreign and domestic navy, foreign and domestic, intelligence. There's a Homeland Air Force pilots, other natures of pilots associated with a Paul Kelly and his neighbors, involved with predicate acts with next to campuses. I never saw him on a campus in my life. Paul Kelly, I don't know him. I never went to the same school as him. He's involved with a Mark Violet and a Mike Violet and others with the intelligence families at Hartford Hospital and New Britain's campuses and hospital. They have fire campuses and families, real estate agencies and their family members involved with a whole bunch of criminally foreign influence uses of investigators, and their roles with people from Russia, Ukraine, China. In other words, China syntax with people from my grammar school that were influenced to put fake nature ties to me, and use tricks like that, like saying a joke when I walk by and I don't know who said it, and I'm never going to see that person or know them, and they just repeat fake things, and then they go back in. And the intelligence community said they have a Kevin Kanisalis, and I believe it's a Denise Kanisalis. I never had a conversation with that. One time there was with Rick Paglione, and then years later he recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed a Leahy family and a Brian Silver were involved with predicate acts with them at corners of the street of a proven principal child abuser's campus, and he had roles with a boyfriend of a daughter of a principal when I went there, and there were students that were involved with child abusers, leaders of kids years before that, who also had roles with enforcing the principal child abuser I caught them with. That's part of the reason I knew about it. I only know Rick Paglione seeking me out to record, confess, demonstrate, and confirm his collusions and confessions of neighbors of mine that were associated with him and their educators who were putting fake things in transcripts, putting fake ties and fake natures of ties to me to fake locations, sequence shifts, pretended to other people behind my back about me. And then they jump into your conversations in the future when you're speaking about predicate acts with kids, and they're pretending to know you. In other words, I never had conversations. I never had anything to do with Anthony Agnew. In other words, and I didn't. In other words, I knew he was trying to set me up one time with his brother when they tried to make a fake exception, and they're trying to get me by acid. And they're one of the people right next to the high school who has roles with this Leahy family and a Dr. Dingleberry and a Dr. Dewberry per people involved with them, involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and with judges and prosecutors changing and faking digital evidences with Facebook also, and World Trade Center predicate acts, and with extremism syntax. So Facebook has personally and professionally collusions with intelligence agencies and with their campuses since before the World Trade Center attack, before they were Facebook. They have roles with predicate acts, with fax methods, and the people counting all sides of criminal and civil cases regarding Facebook and the other countries involved. They have collusion /S. Get me off the fake conversations with the Connecticut News and their sources about the World Trade Center attack, and fake ties to them too. There's a O'Neill family again, and a Leahy family. A Leahy family is with their kids right on Facebook, and an O'Neill family with the new networks and FBI with WTNH and names all along Route 175 and conjunctions to it and corners of that street involved with federal evidences crimes through the years connected. identity theft, fraud, slanders instantly connect simultaneous with that is value adds. There are a whole bunch of identity theft, fraud, slander styles manifest because you guys have been communicating other for how the breaching method that nature itself communicates about and about how our founders communicated had declassified for themselves about how there was a breaching method entrenched. They wanted nothing to do with this slavery that was entrenched. Northern colonies and southern colonies, more than 13 before they were born, to force the counter-extorted people forced to become a unity. That the breaching that the James Madison's plan gave them. You guys aren't even allowing people to be honest. You guys are using all knowledge of good and evil about American history and other sciences to get over on principles, that proper treatments of principles. Otherwise, you wouldn't have left out black pupils, whites of eyes, in the breaching methods reassignment of it. And you wouldn't have self-valued rules replacing that and having replaced it. And you wouldn't be speaking about business pretending you can't fathom originally. And still, the businesses are still criminally, they're involved with predicate acts with facts method /S that were most used to facilitate originally and still only capable of being overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, witch trials courts. Why is there a witch trials place right next to Webb House? Why is it now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum when then and now other is still communicated about those places and about why and how really George Washington had to come to the founding locations, like right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, why and how he had to come there to meet with the French general, had to come to counter-extort at Wethersfield and at Hartford locations. For example, they had the least slavery entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies. Our founders communicated to us they left declassified for us to understand clearer than day. They wanted nothing to do with that. They forced the North and the South to fight against slavery, but blame it on each other because they had internationally monitored conversations of work, criminal enterprise, private one, terrorists, insidiousness of people A through Z, all roles with the thing, and with nature's demonstrations of it, all role having been roles too, forcing those demonstrations blamed on other things other than themselves, or ignored, etc., but pretending other anyway to an extent. Otherwise, that body was sensed, including there were a majority of people, including it was everyone, and that was adapted to. Countries A through Z are in a semi-ancient trap. We have suits and ties, counters, exceptions that cannot defend their, their logic, their reason, their fact, human nature, quality aspects in nature, and afford to be heard, let alone to protract short words with convictions proper by the identity the sciences share. Black people's period. How can you guys can't even deal with black people as whites of eyes, and even the breaching method reassigned that you have our founders framed? How could you even appreciate yin yang? How could you guys speak for culture? Black people.